The night sky burned orange at 2:17 a.m. on Porter Street. Not the gentle glow of sunset, but the furious blaze of a house tearing itself apart. Smoke poured through shattered windows, curling over lawns where kids had played hopscotch that very afternoon. Engines screamed into the neighborhood. Engines screamed into the neighborhood, their red stripes slicing the dark and violent bursts. Neighbors clustered in pajamas and robes, some crying, some too stunned to move, watching the Peterson home collapse into chaos. Radios crackled, firefighters shouted coordinates, sirens wailed, and then something else. Barking, sharp, desperate, urgent. A sound that cut like a blade through the storm. A golden Labrador stumbled into view. A golden Labrador stumbled into view, tripping over hoses, crashing into garbage cans, but never stopping. His chest heaved, his body trembled, yet his barking carried a strange intent, as if he were speaking. Captain Rodriguez froze, his gut twisted. He knew that dog, Max, the blind one, the dog who needed guiding hands just to find his own water bowl. The crew reached the doorway, but the smoke was impenetrable, the heat like opening an oven into the night. Charging in blind meant gambling their lives. They hesitated, and in that moment, Max made a choice for them. The dog who couldn't navigate his own living room shoved past hardened firefighters and plunged headfirst into the inferno, barking towards the back of the house as if he could see every step. Rodriguez stared after him, torn between disbelief and dread. The one who couldn't see had just become their only guide through the darkness. Do you believe animals can be heroes too? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more hero stories. 8 hours earlier, Max had been doing his nightly routine in the same house that was now trying to kill everyone inside it. Lily Peterson, 8 years old with pigtails and gap-toothed smile, guided him carefully around the coffee table, past the couch, towards his favorite spot by the fireplace. Easy, Max. Left a little. Perfect. Her voice was patient, loving, the way it had been every single day for the 2 years since Max lost his sight to diabetes complications. She was his eyes, his compass, his whole world. The neighbors watched his ritual from their windows with that special mixture of pity and admiration, reserved for life's cruelest jokes. Mrs. Harrison from next door would shake her head sadly. Poor creature doesn't even know where he is half the time, completely helpless without that little girl guiding him around. Mr. Anderson from across the street was less kind. Don't know why they keep that dog. Just a burden now. Can't even guard the house anymore. If they could see him now. When the electric fire started in the basement that October night, creeping up through old wiring like a snake made of flame, Max was the first to sense danger, while Jim and Amelia Peterson slept peacefully in their bed, while little Lily dreamed about her upcoming birthday party. Max was already pacing downstairs, whimpering, then barking with an urgency that shattered the suburban quiet. By the time the smoke detector started screaming, and Jim stumbled down the stairs to find his kitchen walls on fire, the flames had already consumed the main staircase. The beautiful wooden steps he'd scented and stained himself were now a waterfall of fire, cutting off any normal escape route. And somewhere in that chaos, as sirens began wailing in the distance and neighbors started dialing 911, came a sound that would haunt everyone who heard it that night. Lily's cough, soft and innocent at first, then more desperate, drifting from somewhere deep inside that burning tomb. Fire is a living thing. It breathes, it grows, it hunts. In 14 minutes, it took for Engine Company 47 to tear through empty streets and screech to a halt on Porter. Those flames had already devoured the ground floor and were clawing their way upstairs like demons ascending from hell. Captain Rodriguez had been fighting fires for 23 years. He'd crawled through collapsing hallways, carried victims down staircases that burned beneath his boots, and pulled more bodies than he cared to remember. He knew that in 10 minutes, 12 if God was generous, the second floor would be gone. He also knew the staircase was ash, the hallways were furnaces, and sending his crew inside would be suicide. The protocol was clear. When a structure reaches full involvement, you protect personnel first. You don't throw good lives after bad. You don't send firefighters to die for people who were probably already gone. Then, Max appeared, a golden Labrador stumbling through the smoke, his paws tangling in hoses, his chest heaving. Rodriguez's breath caught. He knew that dog, Max, Lily's lab, the one he'd seen at last year's station fundraiser, cloudy-eyed, tilting his head towards voices instead of faces. The blind one who needed help just to find his water bowl. The dog burst through the crowd like a cannonball, golden fur singed, paws bleeding from broken glass. He ran straight to the fire truck, barking at Rodriguez with such ferocity that it felt like being screamed at in a foreign tongue he could somehow understand. Before anyone could grab him, Max bolted through the front door. "Jesus Christ, somebody get that dog!" Rodriguez shouted, but it was too late. The flames swallowed him whole. Rodriguez stood at the threshold, staring into what looked like the mouth of hell itself. Around him, his team waited for orders. Behind him, neighbors pressed against police tape, crying, filming, praying. And above him, shadows moved behind second-floor windows. Maybe people, maybe furniture, maybe hope, but maybe nothing. 3 seconds, that's how long he stood there, weighing protocol against instinct, training against humanity, the rules against the sound of a blind dog barking inside that burning maze. "Clark, Thompson, Hall, gear up," he finally said. "We follow that dog." Inside, the fire was relentless. Even with breathing masks, even in full turnout gear, the smoke was like being buried alive in black cotton. Their flashlights cut only shallow cones into the darkness. Thermal cameras flickered, but the house was a boiling blur of heat signatures. What cut through everything was Max. His bark rang clear, sharp and insistent, like a lighthouse beam through fog. It led them around debris they couldn't see, past doorways that spat fire, deeper into the inferno. "How the hell does he know where he's going?" Thompson gasped into his radio, his voice ragged. "Shut up and follow him." Rodriguez snapped, though privately he wondered the same. This was the same dog neighbors pitied, the same dog who couldn't find his water bowl without help. And yet there he was, charting a perfect path through a house that had become a labyrinth of death. They climbed the back staircase, each step groaning under their weight. Flames licked at their boots, the railing disintegrating into sparks. The air upstairs was a tunnel of heat, hot enough to sear lungs in seconds. Max's bark grew sharper, more urgent. He was no longer leading, he was calling. They found him at the end of the hallway, paws raking at a closed bedroom door, his nails screeching against the wood, frantic, unrelenting. Rodriguez kicked the door in. Inside, the Peterson family was huddled together in the far corner. Jim was half conscious, coughing weakly. Amelia lay against the wall, skin pale, chest rising shallowly. Little Lily curled between them, limp as a rag doll. They stuffed wet towels under the door and cracked the window, but smoke had still seeped in. Another 5 minutes, maybe less, and they would have been gone. The crew rushed forward, lifting bodies, checking pulses, and relief hit like a wave. They weren't too late. Then, the alarm started. One by one, the firefighters' air gauges beeped their warnings. Oxygen low. Rodriguez's eyes snapped to the door they'd entered, gone. The hallway behind them was a wall of flame. The staircase they'd climbed already collapsed. The windows, a sheer two-story drop onto concrete. They were trapped. The rescuers and the rescued were sealed inside a box of fire. Rodriguez checked his gauge. 3 minutes of air, 4 if they were lucky. After that, their mass would suck nothing but smoke and poison. He looked down at Lily in her father's arms, tiny chest barely rising, and felt something split inside him. Cap? Clark's voice crackled. What's the move? Rodriguez stared at the flames closing in from all sides, the heat blistering through his gear, and the blind dog at his feet, still barking as if he refused to believe this was the end. He clenched his jaw. They had one chance left, and it depends on a dog who couldn't see. Max's breath came ragged and hot, tongue lolling. His once shining golden coat now dulled to a smoky gray under layers of ash. 4 minutes, he had stumbled with the rest of them, eyes squinting against the sting, body trembling from the heat. But then, suddenly he froze. The firefighters almost stumbled over him in the choking haze. Max's head lifted, his ears twitching like antennae tuned to a frequency none of them could hear. Then, without hesitation, he padded towards the far wall of the bedroom. No fumbling, no uncertainty. He moved with the clarity of instinct, as though he had known all along that something vital waited there. Rodriguez squinted through the smoke. To his eyes, it was just the wallpaper peeling from the heat. But Max stopped in front of a narrow window, barely 3 feet wide, barred with decorative iron that blended into the wall's shadow. From the street, no one would have noticed it. From the roof, it is impossible to reach in time. Max sat, then he gave one bark. Not frantic, not repeated. One sharp, clear sound that sliced through the chaos like a beacon. Here. The words seemed to form in Rodriguez's head. His oxygen gauge blinked red. The Peterson family, father limp, mother barely conscious, child wheezing in shallow bursts, had maybe 60 seconds before the smoke claimed them for good, and the nearest ladder truck was still stationed at the front of the house, cut off from this hidden side. Every piece of protocol in Rodriguez's training screamed do not. You don't waste precious seconds on locked barred windows. You don't gamble on an unconfirmed escape route. You don't let a dog dictate command decisions inside a collapsing house. But the dog had just done what none of their expensive equipment could. Found an opening no one else saw. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Then he made his call. Hall, gutters now. Clark, help me get them to the wall. Thompson, radio for a ladder on the side yard. The crew didn't question. In fire, hesitation killed. Orders meant survival. Hall snapped the cutters onto the bars, sparks dancing as steel groaned. Miraculously, the old decorative frame gave way like aluminum foil. Clark hauled the father up, dragging his dead weight towards the sudden square of hope. Outside, the paramedics scrambled into view, alerted by Thompson's desperate radio call. Go! Rodriguez shouted. They passed Lily first, tiny arms outstretched. She disappeared through the opening into the arms of a medic waiting on the roof overhang. Relief surged through Rodriguez, but he shoved it down, too soon to celebrate. Amelia followed, slumping unconscious as another medic pulled her free. Then Jim, staggering, pressed one trembling hand into Rodriguez's glove. His voice rasped a single word, "Thank you." It nearly undid him, but there was no time. Rodriguez shoved his team through next, oxygen alarms shrieking, air tanks bone dry. The heat pressed close, smoke swirling thicker now, flames licking at the doorframe. He turned back. Max! The dog lay sprawled on the floor, chest heaving shallow and fast, golden fur blackened. His sides rose and fell with a terrible rhythm, too quick, too weak. 15 minutes of unfiltered smoke had done its work. For one heartbeat, Rodriguez saw his own daughter's retriever at home, waiting faithfully by the door each night. The thought cut him raw. He wouldn't leave this one behind. He lunged, scooping all 72 pounds of limp dog into his arms. Muscle screamed under the weight of his gear, but adrenaline carried him. He turns towards the window just as the room behind him roared. Flames erupted in an orange explosion that blew out every pane of glass, the blast shoving him forward, and for an instant, the world became fire, sound, and fear. Then air, cool, merciful air as he dove through the opening and landed hard on the roof ledge. Paramedics reached, steadying him, dragging Max from his arms. Rodriguez ripped off his mac and soaked in the night's October chill. His lungs burned, but at least they worked. Around him, the family was already being loaded into ambulances. His crew slumped on the grass, exhausted but alive. But Max wasn't moving. The paramedic laid him flat on the ground. Suit streaked his muzzle, eyes half closed, chest fluttering in shallow motions that looked more like the memory of breathing than life itself. Rodriguez knelt, one hand trembling as it pressed to the dog's side. "Come on, boy," he whispered, voice breaking. "Don't you quit on us right now. You found a way. You saved them. Don't stop here." The night held its breath. The Petersons' front yard was a battlefield. Fire hoses lay hissing, and floodlights illuminated the blackened house. Sirens wailed, radios crackled, and diesel engines rumbled. Police cars, idling ambulances, and news vans with satellites stabbed the sky, creating a scene of chaotic aftermath. Neighbors crowded behind yellow tape, some recording on their phones, others frozen in horrified silence. But no one looked at the burning house anymore. All eyes were locked on one small patch of grass near the curb, where Captain Miguel Rodriguez knelt over a limp body of a golden Labrador. He tossed aside his helmet and gloves. With calloused hands, he pressed into Max's chest, forcing a rush of air into the dog's smoke-scarred lungs. A paramedic held a tiny oxygen mask to Max's muzzle, glancing at her monitor and shaking her head almost imperceptibly as she worked. Rodriguez's voice cracked through clenched teeth. "Come on, boy. You saved them. Now let us save you." The crowd hushed, watching as Lily Peterson sat on a stretcher, her eyes fixed on Max. Her parents were being loaded into ambulances, unconscious but breathing. But Lily's attention never left the unmoving hero on the grass. For 23 years, Rodriguez had performed CPR on victims, but this was different. This wasn't a routine save. This was the creator who had defied logic and guided them through the burning labyrinth. Rodriguez refused to lose him. He pressed harder, ribs flexing under his palms. "Stay with us, Max." The paramedic lifted the mask for a moment, checked for breath, pulse, anything. She shook her head again. Rodriguez's gut clenched. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder now. Neighbors sniffling, someone praying under their breath, another whispering he's gone. Rodriguez has shut them out. He pressed again, harder, faster. Sweat streaked through the suit on his face. He counted compressions under his breath, his voice trembling. 5 more, just 5 more. Still, nothing. The paramedic shifted uncomfortably. Her lips parted, about to speak the unspeakable. It was time to stop, but Rodriguez shook his head sharply. Not yet. He bent lower, forehead nearly touching Max's. "I've carried men out of fire who gave up long before their bodies did. You don't get to give up, not after what you did tonight." His voice broke into a ragged whisper. Not when she's watching, because Lily was still staring at them, clutching her stretcher rails with white-knuckled hands, whispering something into her mask. Rodriguez couldn't hear it over the chaos, but he could see her lips forming the same 2 words again and again. "Please, Max, please." The paramedic repositioned the mask, adjusted the oxygen flow, and gave Rodriguez a look that begged reality back into the scene. But he ignored it. He pressed again, praying through his hands. The silence was unbearable. Even the fire seemed to be quiet, its crackle muted beneath the heavy weight of waiting. The crowd leaned forward. Strangers pressed shoulder to shoulder, everyone suspended in the same fragile hope. Rodriguez's arms trembled, his knees ached, and his breath came in ragged bursts. He was exhausted, but all he could think about was Lily's terrified face, her parents' broken bodies, and the moment Max had vanished into the fire without hesitation. And then he heard it. A sound so small he thought he'd imagined it. A faint, wet cough. Rodriguez froze, hands hovering above Max's chest. The paramedic jerked her head up, eyes wide. Then a twitch. Just the barest flicker of a golden tail against the grass. Again, Rodriguez ordered hoarsely. The paramedic pressed the mask firmly to Max's snout. Rodriguez pushed down once more, and this time, Max's chest expanded on its own. A rattling breath wheezed into the oxygen mask. The crowd gasped. Max's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused but alive. He tried to lift his hand, managed only a couple of inches, then let it fall back. His body shattered, legs weakly twitching, but his chest kept rising, falling. The silence broke the glass. Cheers erupted, a tidal wave of sound that shook the block. Neighbors hugged, cried, shouted. Someone started clapping, and within seconds, everyone was clapping, the rhythm echoing off fire-scarred walls. Even the firefighters who had just fought back the blaze were wiping their faces, some under the pretense of clearing soot from their eyes. On her stretcher, Lily ripped off her mask and laughed through sobs, reaching her tiny hand toward Max. A medic tried to stop her, but she fought free and managed to brush her fingers against his paw. His tail thumped once in reply, weak but sure. Rodriguez sat back on his heels, dizzy with relief. He pressed his palm against Max's ribs, feeling the steady drumbeat of life. For the first time in that night, he let himself breathe. The paramedics carefully lifted Max onto a stretcher, wrapping him in blankets and monitoring his breathing. Lily's parents were already en route to the hospital. The fire was finally declared under control. The war zone was quieting. Lily still watched Max, stroking his ears as they prepared to load him into the ambulance. Rodriguez nodded slowly, his throat too tight to speak, because sometimes the truth doesn't need words. Sometimes it's carried in the steady beat of a dog's heart, the cheers of a crowd, and the unshakable bond between a child and the hero who refused to leave her behind. The Peterson house was nothing more than a blackened shell, its windows blown out, its frames sagging under the weight of smoke and ruin. By morning, the smell of charred wood still hung heavy over the street. Yet, the story people would tell, the one they would remember, wasn't about the destruction. It was about a dog who refused to give up. At Mercy General, Lily Peterson lay in a hospital bed between her recovering parents. An oxygen tube was taped under his nose, and soot still stained her small hands. But she didn't care about any of that. She kept her eyes on the figure curled at her feet, Max, her golden Labrador wrapped in warm blankets with ivy lines taped to his leg. His chest rose and fell slowly but surely, and every time his tail gave a faint wag, Lily's smile grew brighter. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice soft but certain. Her parents reached for her hand, tears filling their tired eyes, because they knew she was right. Captain Rodriguez stood at the doorway, helmet tucked under his arm, uniform still streaked with ash. He had come to check on the family, but for once, he found himself at a loss for words. 23 years in the fire service had shown him tragedy and resilience in equal measure. But this bond between a girl and her dog, this miracle of survival, felt like something deeper. When a reporter asked him later what he thought, Rodriguez didn't talk about flames or tactics. He didn't mention the countless hours of training or the precision of the rescue. Instead, he said, "I've seen men run into fire for their brothers, mothers fight through smoke for their children, but what that dog did, blind, stumbling through a burning house to find the people he loved, that was pure instinct, pure loyalty. You can't train that, you can only witness it." The video of Max's revival spread quickly. Millions watched the moments Rodriguez's hands pressed against the dog's chest, the moment Lily's desperate plea broke through the silence, the moment Max's tail gave that first fragile wag. Across the country, strangers stared at their screens, some hugging their own pets a little tighter, others simply marveling at the idea of hope clawing its way back from the edge of loss. Neighbors who had stood behind the yellow tape that night couldn't stop talking about it. Mrs. Harrison, who once complained about Max's barking, admitted through tears that she had never seen anything so brave. Children drew pictures of the golden dog and taped them into the Petersons' temporary home. Firefighters from other stations sent messages of respect, calling Max one of us. But the person most changed was Lily. For weeks, she refused to leave Max's side, curling up with him on his blanket. Even when the hospital staff tried to shoo her back to her bed, she carried his water bowl, fluffed his pillow, and whispered secrets into his ears. as if she owned him every breath of their new beginning. In truth, she probably did. One afternoon, when Max was finally strong enough to sit up and lean against her, Lily said something that stayed with Rodriguez for the rest of his career. She rested her head on Max's shoulder and whispered, "He saw us, even when nobody else could. He saw where we are." Rodriguez swallowed hard because she was right. In the thickest smoke, in the darkest chaos, Max had found the only thing that mattered: his family. The Peterson house would be rebuilt. The scars on Lily's parents would fade. But the world would move on, as it always does. But long after the ashes cooled, the people would remember that night, not because of tragedy, but because of a golden Labrador who refused to let fire steal the people he loved. And in every retelling, one truth would shine through. Heroes don't always wear helmets or uniforms. Sometimes they wear fur. Everyday heroes are all around us.